Some mornings change everything. For Robert Sullivan, that Thursday began like any other, checking his phone over coffee, reviewing contracts, preparing for another high-stakes meeting. But nothing could have prepared him for what he'd witnessed from his study window. Breathing room. Robert was what people call successful. At 58, he'd built Sullivan Industries from the ground up. His home in Maple Grove reflected that success, a beautiful colonial with manicured lawns and tall oaks that whispered in the breeze. But all the money in the world couldn't solve the one thing that kept him awake at night. His daughter, Emma, was 6 years old and had never spoken a single word. A tender pause. Born with selective mutism, Emma lived in a world of silence. Not because she couldn't speak. The doctors had explained that, carefully, but because something deep inside made words impossible. Robert had tried everything. The best specialists from Boston to California. Play therapy, art therapy, music therapy. Each expert left with the same regretful expression. The same empty promises that sometimes with time. They'd had 6 years of time. Gentle transition. That Thursday morning, Emma sat by the front window as usual. Her stuffed rabbit clutched close, watching the world go by with those thoughtful hazel eyes. She was a beautiful child, her mother's auburn curls, his own serious expression. Robert's late wife, Margaret, had passed when Emma was just 3. Sometimes he wondered if the silence had started then. Though the doctors said no, it went back further. The garbage truck rumbled down Oakwood Lane right on schedule, 7:45. Natural pause. Most people never really notice the folks who collect their trash. Robert certainly hadn't, not in all the years he'd lived there. But Emma always ran to the window on Thursday mornings. She'd press her small hands against the glass and watch intently as the truck made its rounds. This particular morning, something was different. Slow, observant tone. The regular crew had a new member, a woman, perhaps in her early 30s, with her hair pulled back in a practical ponytail. She wore the same blue uniform and safety vest as her colleagues, the same work gloves and sturdy boots, but there was something about the way she moved. Efficient yet unhurried, strong yet graceful. Robert watched as she approached their bins. Emma had already slipped out the front door, something she never did. His heart jumped. She was usually so cautious, so withdrawn. "Emma!" he called, abandoning his coffee and rushing outside. Emotional beat. But Emma wasn't running away. She stood on the front path, very still, watching the woman work. The garbage collector noticed her immediately, and instead of the quick smile and wave most adults give to children before returning to their work, she did something unexpected. She stopped, put down what she was lifting, and knelt down to Emma's level. Warmth entering the narrative. "Well, good morning," the woman said gently. Her voice was warm, like honey and tea. "I'm Maria. I've seen you watching from the window the last few weeks. I've been wanting to say hello." Emma didn't respond. Of course she didn't. But she didn't run either. Robert stood frozen on the porch, something tightening in his chest. Quiet wonder. Maria didn't seem bothered by the silence. She just smiled, a real smile that reached her eyes. "I like your red dress," she continued, as naturally as if they were having a conversation. "Red's my favorite color, too. Makes the world feel brighter, don't you think?" She pointed to a red cardinal perched in one of the oak trees. "See him? He comes by most mornings. I think he's checking to make sure I'm doing a good job." Emma's gaze followed Maria's finger to the bird. The smallest smile touched her lips. A meaningful pause. "You know what I love about this job?" Maria said, sitting back on her heels. "I get to see the whole neighborhood wake up. I see Mrs. Patterson's cat stretching on her porch. I hear Mr. Chin playing his violin. He practices every morning at 7. And I see kind people like you who take the time to notice folks, even when we're just doing regular work." Robert felt tears sting his eyes. When was the last time someone had just talked to Emma? Really talked to her. Without expectation, without pity, without that careful therapeutic tone. Natural progression. From that morning on, everything changed in small, beautiful ways. The next Thursday, Emma was waiting outside, still silent, but holding a drawing she'd made. Crayon garbage trucks and stick figures and that red cardinal. Maria accepted it like it was a Rembrandt, holding it carefully with her gloved hands. "This is wonderful," she said softly. "May I keep it? I'd like to put it in my truck." Emma nodded solemnly. Building warmth. The week after, Maria brought something too, a small book about birds. "I found this at a yard sale," she explained. "Made me think of you and our cardinal friend." Robert, watching from his study window, felt something he hadn't felt in years. Hope, maybe, or just gratitude that someone saw his daughter as a person, not a problem to be solved. Gentle pacing. Summer eased into fall. The ritual continued. Maria would arrive and Emma would be there, and they'd spend a few minutes together. Maria told stories about the interesting things. She'd seen on her route a family of rabbits that lived behind the library, the way the Morrison's dog always tried to help by carrying the recycling bags. She never pushed Emma to respond, never asked why she didn't talk, just accepted her exactly as she was. Emotional depth. One October morning, Maria's truck pulled up earlier than usual. Robert noticed she moved stiffly, favoring her left side. Emma noticed too. When Maria knelt down for their morning chat, Emma did something new. She reached out and gently touched Maria's arm. Her small face creased with concern. "I'm okay, sweetheart," Maria said softly. "Just pulled a muscle yesterday. Getting older, you know. 33 isn't 23 anymore." She laughed, but there was a tiredness there. Emma disappeared into the house, returned with her stuffed rabbit, her most precious possession, and held it out to Maria. Tender moment. "Oh, honey," Maria whispered, and Robert could see she was blinking back tears. "That's so kind. But that's your special bunny. You keep him safe." Emma shook her head firmly and pressed the rabbit into Maria's hands. Maria looked up then, as if sensing Robert watching. Their eyes met across the distance. She mouthed 2 words, "Thank you." But Robert knew. Emma was the one teaching them all about kindness. Building to the moment. Thanksgiving week arrived cold and clear. The oaks had dropped their leaves and frost silvered the lawns each morning. Robert was reviewing quarterly reports when he heard the truck. Then he heard something else. Shouting, alarmed voices. Quickening slightly. He ran outside to find chaos. The truck had stopped at an odd angle. Maria's co-workers were on their phones, voices urgent. And Maria was on the ground beside the truck, conscious but clearly in pain. Slipped on ice. One of the crew was explaining to the 911 operator. Twisted her ankle bad, maybe broke it. The crucial moment. Emma stood on the front walk, her whole body rigid with distress. Robert started toward her, but something made him stop. His daughter was trembling. Her mouth opened, closed. Her hands clenched and unclenched. And then, in a voice that was small and scratchy from disuse but absolutely clear, Emma spoke her first words in 6 years. "Maria needs help." Letting it breathe. The world seemed to stop. Maria, even through her pain, turned her head. Tears streamed down her face. Robert's legs nearly gave out. Emma was already moving, running to Maria's side, taking her hand. "I'm here," she said, each word deliberate and careful. "You'll be okay." Warm resolution. The ambulance came. Maria's ankle was badly sprained, but not broken. Robert and Emma visited her in the hospital that evening, Emma talking in her quiet, thoughtful way, telling Maria about the birds they'd seen, about the book she was reading, about everything and nothing. Later, when the nurse had stepped out and Emma was drawing in the corner of the room, Maria said to Robert, "I didn't do anything special, you know." "You did everything special," Robert replied quietly. "You saw her, really saw her." Reflection. Maria smiled. "She saw me too. That's the thing about kindness. It goes both ways. I was going through some hard times when I started this route. Divorce, money troubles, questioning everything. And then there was this little girl who looked at me like I mattered, like my work mattered. She reminded me that connection doesn't need words." Gentle ending. The holidays that year were different in the Sullivan house. There was talking now, not constant. Emma was still a quiet child by nature, but the silence had broken. She spoke to her father, to her teacher, to her therapist who wept with joy at the breakthrough. But Thursday mornings remained special. Maria would arrive, and Emma would be waiting, and they'd talk about birds and trucks, and the small, beautiful things that make up ordinary days. Sometimes Robert joined them. Sometimes he just watched from his window and counted his blessings. final warmth. He'd learned something important, that healing doesn't always come from the people you'd expect, in the ways you'd imagine. Sometimes it comes from someone who simply shows up with an open heart and treats your child like a person worthy of friendship. Sometimes kindness is the most powerful medicine of all. And sometimes, often, the people we don't notice are the ones who change our lives forever. Soft close. The garbage truck still comes every Thursday at 7:45. Emma still watches for it, and Maria still stops to say hello. Some mornings do change everything. This one changed everything that mattered.